Great, that seems to have worked. So thanks again for joining. I think we have an amazing session here. We have Tomer Lanis, who is going to be the main speaker of the event. This event is going to be super interactive. So I would like to encourage all of you to also participate. We have a chat open in Teams. You find it under the 3 dots in your pane. We also will have a website where you can actually submit your votes, and we really want you to participate in that. It's going to be a super cool session. So I think a couple of people know us already as a company. The event is hosted by advaisor.io. My name is Dimitri. I'm going to be the moderator of this show and also the host. So whenever you do have questions or technical stuff, please also reach out to me or Mark, who is supporting us on the technical side. And with that, I would maybe first ask you to do the following. Since this session is going to be highly interactive, there is a website called menti.com. It's probably easiest if you take your mobile phones and access that page via your mobile phone. And you will be asked to enter codes. The code is below 237641. This is going to be for the voting. Don't vote quite yet. The content is still to come. But if you are prepared, we're going to have a nice and smooth voting session there as well. Right, so the session is hosted by advaisor.io, and before we actually dive into the real content presented by Tomer, I would like to quickly run you through who Advaisor is and what we do, so that you know why we are hosting Rethink Corporate Culture sessions. And as a company, why we do care about corporate culture and why we run this session is we truly believe that culture should be the #1 priority there. And our vision is to improve corporate culture for actually all the people out there. And we do this because we truly believe that a team only is successful if they collaborate well, and they collaborate well with each other if there is a certain culture, right? And we understand culture in that sense. So great culture and remote work. I think that's the current challenge, right? Culture is hard to grasp already, but if you take this in the remote context, this is going to be even harder. And the improvement context of culture in remote world is even harder, I believe. So we have a couple of new challenges coming up there. And I wanted to quickly run you through Advaisor and who we are. So we are a tech company. We approach culture from a technology point of view. We are integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem. And what we do is we help everyone in an organization become aware on how they contribute to the culture. So whenever people communicate, Advaisor is a helper that makes people aware how you come across, right? And fresh going to be released soon. We have a culture trends board that allows people to over time understand how they contribute to cultures. Are you spreading positivity? How are you interacting with clients, and so on and so forth. So this is about us. Obviously, the entire organization is what we focus on as well. And the Advaisor software is able to understand the cultural aspects for the entire organization. We look at trust, we look at collaboration, silos, and so on and so forth. But that is just a quick introduction by me. The main focus today is going to be on this session with Tomer. And Tomer, I'm really glad to have you here today. I would like to try and have your screen shared instead of mine. This might take a couple of seconds, so bear with us here, please.
Thanks, Dimitri. How's my audio? Can you hear me well?
Yes.
So now I'm going to share my screen. It will come on everybody's desktop immediately.
That works.
And
we see half of your screen and the Teams chat still. The presentation is right next to it.
Yeah, it is important to follow the chat during the presentation. So this is my screen, and on the chat, I'm actually going to put now once again the link for everybody just to click and join the Menti. It is an interactive webinar, as Dimitri mentioned, and at any time I would like to encourage everybody to speak your mind. I know it's not so easy when you have a big unfamiliar group. We also have the Menti, and we can use the chat as we go along. For the people that know me well, they know that I have a stage fright, and this works also virtually. So I ask my daughter to throw a pillow on me if I speak too fast. With that, I want to go already to the first question. And this is on Menti, so please take your mobiles or even on your laptop. You can just go to menti.com and I'll activate. And you can already see the results of the responses. And it's important for us to realize who we are talking to today, right? Are we talking about people that are versed in home office or people that do it for the first time? And I see there's quite a distribution here with 33 responses. We'll give a few more seconds for everybody to respond. We should have a little bit more than 50 participants. And I think the statistics will not change much. So we see quite an even distribution between seldom, regularly, and frequently, while a few, just a couple of people probably experience now the first time maybe a home office, or maybe not even, because some people still need to be at their office today. And this means actually that quite a lot of the next 20 minutes will not be about you. Will not be about you, meaning that it speaks mostly about people in the corporate world that don't have home office as a choice. We have home office as maybe as an exception, and we'll talk about this. And it's very important for us to remember that not everybody feels the same, and not everybody experience the same. This transition that is almost overnight for tens of thousands of people to move into home office, the mandatory home office. With that, it's still okay to keep voting, but I'll go back to the presentation, and I want to start with a very simple question, a very basic question for everybody. Feel free to unmute yourself, and very concisely, if you can just share what being professional means to you. It's okay to do that on the chat or with your microphone. Anybody wants to give it a go? So dress professionally, I see on the chat. This is already on the screen as well. Anything except dressing professionally.
I'm going to try and break the voice ice here. So I would say to me, being professional is mostly about two things. One of which is taking your job seriously, not just as like something that you have to do because you have to do it, but something that you take a certain amount of pride in and trying to do your best at it. And the other is upholding a certain standard of dealing with other people, because after all, you're there to solve a problem, and part of the problems might be conflict with other people. That's what being professional would mean to me.
Fantastic. So the point of really the point of being able to interact with others. I see that also on the chat, and the point of taking it seriously, meaning putting your priorities right. Business is high priority, and private or non-business is a lower priority. And looking at the chat, there's quite a few answers that repeat similar notions. I'm going to make it a little bit easier. If you can see my screen, I put two different columns, and taking it seriously means for me also being the certainty, the last one on the bottom, right? Because you manage people's expectations by taking it seriously. They know that you will deliver on your promise. Or if I'm asking you to use the chat or even your microphone and just tell me which column, the left or the right, I should label professional.
Hi, Tomer. It's Vandana.
Yes.
And I'm looking at both columns, and it's a little bit black and white, the columns. And for me personally, the left column is predominant, but the emotional quotient, emotional intelligence is equally important when it comes to being professional for me.
Right.
Also, to build on the point that was mentioned earlier, for me, it's being authentic. It's being very committed to the task, role, responsibility at hand. That is what professional would be for me.
Fantastic.
I mean,
yeah.
Sorry, if I could just add, I mean, you know, by definition, given we're all humans, no one is mistake proof and we all make mistakes. So I guess the point is, when I say authentic, is to own up to your mistakes, learn from it, and, you know, build on it.
Thanks, Vandana. That's very important to hear. Any other opinions? Any other voices?
This is Andre. I would very much agree with what was just said. I just wanted to maybe add that to professionalism, it also means to be professional in something. You have to be professional in one area. And what I see right now in this whole COVID discussion, you know, if you are, like, say, a scientist, it's normal that you're uncertain. By definition, that's what you do for your life, you know. And it's so in that sense, I would say on the right-hand side, this is typically, you know, I think what people who are professionals in their field are typically, you know, very much familiar with. I mean, you are uncertain, you know that you're imperfect, you know that you're curious about new stuff. Typically, you are more casual because you don't tend so much about, you know, formal stuff, and emotional. That maybe it depends on the personality. So I think it's a good example right now when you hear all the people, the biologists on the calls on TV and on the newspaper. All of a sudden, you know, before that, you know, the fools were reading. You know, in the meantime, people are listening again to professionals, and I think that's not a bad thing. That's one of the few good things about this whole thing.
Thanks, Andrew, and I really like that, and I'm also trying to follow the chat, which is showing again, similar to what we've seen here in this result. We are talking now within this call to a lot of people that already have a lot of experience of mixing the private and the business sphere. And if I'm looking here on the image on the right of the screen, right, this dress code, the formal dress code, it's probably what I would find. It's very typical for profiles on LinkedIn. For example, if you search for financial industry, if you search for consulting, for legal professions, you will see a lot of people that are really dressed identically because they want to appear professional. And I'm talking about this crowd. I'm talking about the corporate world, people that need not only to be professional, but also to look professional. And as Vandana mentioned, I'm trying to make it here provocative in a black and white image, right? You need to be either emotional or rational. You need to be either formal or casual. You need either to know or to be curious. But actually what we see on this call and by reading the chat, we actually see more and more of a mix within the term, within the concept of being professional. If I follow the corporate standards, the standards of the corporate world, where professional needs to be rational and makes no mistakes. And I'm actually talking from experience. Just 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting, a project meeting with one of my clients, and the instruction was to be very professional for everybody. Everybody needs to be professional, and the client used the word emotionless at work. So you need to take decisions very predictable in a sense, and being emotional is not helping. If I label the left column professional, and I see that a lot of people would like also to label the right column professional, what would be another label for the right column? What would you label the right column in addition to professional? I see Christina was the first one, and I'll actually give you the applause here. Me too. Me too, Christina. So yeah, feel free to like Christina's response. I think it's, I mean, of course, you can be human and professional at the same time. It is sometimes giving us a little conflict because some of those traits, those fundamental traits of being human, of the human nature, to be emotional and curious and imperfect, they are not always appreciated in the business world. And it used to be easy to separate. It used to be easy to distinguish between the private and the business world, because if I wake up in the morning and I put up business attire and I commute to an office and I badge myself in, I know now I'm in a professional business environment. While as long as I stay at home, in my private sphere, I can easily normally be more casual. I can be imperfect, I can be uncertain, I can promise my kids to do something, but if I do it the next day, nothing really happened. It's not something that I would do at work. And definitely I can be much, it's more appreciated to be emotional, to express my emotions and to listen to my emotions in the private sphere more than in the business sphere. Of course, this is pre-corona times. What happens today? Today we don't have this separation. We don't have the space and time separation between the private and the business sphere. And I think everybody here needs to mix the two spheres. So we see a lot of situations where the business environment is invading the private sphere. So right now I'm sitting in my winter garden and I ask everybody else in the living room to not to have background noises, for example. And at the same time, you have a lot of the private sphere invading the business sphere. For example, if you look at what I'm wearing, I wonder how many of you today, how many of you right now, I don't see everybody's cameras, how many of you wear ties and business, business formal dress? So the private sphere is also invading the business sphere. Are there any questions or any comments, any reactions to what I'm saying so far?
Yes, if I may be so free as to go ahead. I think that also to some extent, also historically, a lot depended on what job precisely you were fulfilling, right? So even perhaps if the norms, especially regarding dress code, have softened in many industries over the past few decades, in the golden age of computers in the 70s and 80s, people or engineers would show up to work in the same suit and tie as everybody else, but they would have a lot of creative possibility at their job, right? So they would still cover a lot of that second column. Whereas nowadays you might have people working in different industries where obviously the engineers all wear t-shirts, but maybe other industries you already have a lot loosening of the dress code. But because of the nature of the job that is being performed, you have less of that freedom to be curious or imperfect or uncertain.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that comment. And we can see since 2005, it's very normal for Mark Zuckerberg to go on stage with a t-shirt. I didn't see many bank CEOs doing the same until 3 weeks ago, when the first time that I've seen a CEO of a financial institute holding a town hall from their basement with a t-shirt. So absolutely, we're talking about different industries. And again, for some people I've seen dialing into this call, from if you look at the architects, artists, I have a couple of participants here I see joining from Israel. I'm sure the dress code is different and the norms are different, and it's a different term to be professional. And keep in mind what we're looking at, what I'm emphasizing here is the financial industry, the professional business environment in Zurich, in Switzerland, is quite, how you said it before, quite late in adopting 21st century millennial norms. And if you look at LinkedIn, actually, you can see this dress code escalates with seniority. The more senior people are, the more they feel the need to appear professional in having the more expensive tie and the more expensive handcuffs in order just to portray that image. With that, I want to continue a little bit deeper into the term professional and look at two different elements, two different aspects of it. And by reading the chat, I think that you get this even without explaining, but look at the essence versus formality. Essence being really the expertise and values and relationships and results, while formality is the appearance and spelling and procedures and certificates that you can bring on the surface. Please go now again to Menti. Just say next question. Make your choice. Now asking to make a choice of what and should be, and pay attention here. I'm asking about the traditional corporate world, right? The traditional corporate world. Okay, we will not see individual responses, but we will see an average of all the is versus should be. And we start seeing here quite a gap already with 13 participants. We'll give a few more seconds for more people to respond. And I can imagine statistically, it's not going to change much from 20 to 50 participants. So we got now 50% sample size, and I can already see a difference here. So obviously, professional is higher in formality than professional should be, which is quite encouraging. There is the desire to lose on formality, to let go of formality when you talk about being professional. And I think, obviously, with the high-tech industry, with all the startups, if you go now to the startup incubator or to the shared workspaces, places in Zurich, you will definitely see the desire to lose on formality. And here we go. This is a Teams meeting from 3 weeks ago. It's a real meeting, it's not staged. And what I would like you now, you can shout it to your microphone, or you can also use the chat on a scale from 1 to 10. Just put a number from 1 to 10 to tell me how professional the guy is. On a scale from 1 to 10. Just looking at the guy. All right, intentionally is 10. We have 4, 5, 6. We have an 8. We have a 5. We have quite a distribution between 3 and 8. A 9. Thank you. With that, and now I'm moving from the guy to the girl. So now the woman. From here, from 1 to 10, the level of professionalism for the woman on the screen. No idea. That's a very nice answer. Again, a distribution from 3 to 6 to 8. Iliana 8. That's see yourself with the leg up. I don't know how many people would sit with in the business environment, right? In the office around the meeting room. What about the level of professionalism for the potato? I don't expect everybody to answer, but basically what we see here, a different picture, right? I just want to remind you comparing with the lady, the LinkedIn image to the way people dress currently, and how often do you see people definitely the desire to lose informality is realized only when talking about the dress code. People talked about and how professional they were about their decisions or the quality of the results, but just by physical appearance, you can see an image of is number 2, I think, but very authentic. So thank you. Again, this is on this image what we see, the mixing of private sphere and business sphere. In the private sphere, and you can see a lot of the private sphere, for example, in the background with the dress code and the knee up, and the guy even that is, I don't know, clean t-shirt, but still unshaved. I don't know if he used the same shave length for the office. Let's look at another example. This is a very famous, one of the most tweeted videos actually from 2017. So that's just over 3 years ago. If you missed that, it's a BBC live interviews about political events in Korea. And in the middle of the interview, the kids storm in the room. And you can tell by the face and the reactions of Mr. Robert Kelly that he was really embarrassed, really embarrassed, trying to hide the kids from the camera. Ago, this little picture is so still 3 years ago, and you can see that within a week, the guy decided to draw and invite the family into the frame. So they held another interview, lose the tie, lose the embarrassment, just be yourself. And just be yourself does mean that you are less professional. And of course, this was just one incident, a very exceptional, very unique incident. Today, this is the norm, right? This is shared experience of millions of people. And I want to draw your attention to the subtitle saying, kids interrupting video calls are very good and we love them. And this is now become so not only that people are forced to mix private and business spheres, people start actually to enjoy it, to turn that into a social event. And this is one of the paradigms that I see shifting very just in the imagine it's only 5 weeks since everybody was forced to go into home office. And I want now to spend just a few more minutes on the second paradigm. And for that, we will have another Menti question. I'll just activate it on Menti. So we have here 36 respondents. And when I say black sheep, I mean those people that are difficult to trust, those people that do not deliver, those people that need, those people that are exceptionally low performers.
Tomer, just to clarify, these are not, sorry, these are not people who necessarily challenge the norm.
No, that's correct. You're correct, not necessarily. Talking about the low performers, people that you can't really trust to deliver. If you can take a few seconds, and we will see again the distribution. And again, we're talking about the corporate world, and I see quite a lot of people are in favor of laying off, which is odd. Haven't seen in the past 20 years, I haven't seen many. I've seen probably a handful of incidents where people were actually laid off because of performance issues. And then closely supervised is getting to the first place by far. Closely supervised meaning for me, what I hear when I look at closely supervised, I understand it's part of the culture of command and control, right? If you want people to perform higher, you will need to control them. And of course, in the office environment, if you want to supervise someone, you just sit next to them and you look what they do and you notice what time they come in and what times they go, and if they actually spend their time productively or not. It's not, I mean, it's manageable to see people, line managers, supervising closely their teammates sitting at the same office. Well, I mean, for the mandatory office, and for that, of course, we can see this third option here, which is I mean, this is not news. Everybody here probably already knows number one motivator for intellectual tasks is the autonomy and the purpose. It's I'm happy with the 32 responses. I'm moving to the next slide.
But perhaps if I can add a thought here, you know, I think it really boils down to what you define as performance and black sheep. So when I think of black sheep in a sense of corrosive behavior in terms of our non-negotiables that we define as a basis for our culture, then I have made the experience you rather let such people go very quickly instead of trying, you know, to fix it somehow. And so I think there is a very, very broad interpretation of black sheep here. You know, like if performance issue is just like good citizenship behavior, but really on, let's say, task level not well, is completely different compared to really corrosive behavior based on values. And there, just because you said you're surprised about, you know, the layoff.
Thanks, Andreas. I'm with you on that, and definitely, I have seen people getting released during the probation time, because then it's really easy. And during the probation time, you should already see within 3 months if someone is corrosive or not, something that you missed in the interview. After the probation time, it's just very, very difficult. It's really difficult to lay off people, and I'm not even talking about France or Germany where they have their unions and people really feel safe at work. It would be a huge exception to see layoff. But thank you very much for clarifying that, and I think it's true. I'm talking about the low performers, not about the corrosive, the poisonous behaviors. Moving back to the home office paradigm. So I'm asking here basically why it used to be an exception. Until February 2020, getting home office was some kind of a privilege. It was privilege for people that were trusted and were high performance, but you had to be lucky in order to be able to do that. And in my experience, it was and still is quite kind of a tightrope of balancing act between private and business spheres. Exactly what we spoke before, right? As soon as we mix the business and the private spheres, it's very difficult for people to keep the same performance. It's uncertain, will or will they not keep the same performance? Will they be able to focus? And just remember that Andreas said, when we asked about being professional, meaning taking it seriously, can you still take it as serious when you're at home and you have the fridge and Netflix and the kids and some other distractions? And of course, there is the risk of people not producing or not working as they do in the office when they are less supervised. And can I or can I not supervise? And it's also difficult for a line manager to send somebody, unleash someone and trust them to work and be able to justify that later on to their supervisor, right? To their division heads, saying, okay, why did you let them work from home if they don't deliver? You have to control them closer. And that's the reality. Now, of course, today it's not possible to keep that close supervision. So line managers are increasingly faced with the choice. If do I increase the supervision? And there's quite a few ways that I've seen in the last 5 weeks. Some line managers decide to have a morning meeting every day at 8:30. Just to see that everybody is up and online and ready to work. There's some line managers that keep sending random chat messages to their employees to see how responsive they are. And this is ways to increase supervision, and it's unlimited by your imagination how you can increase supervision. Or would you opt for the second path, which is provide even a stronger purpose and autonomy that we know that's going to be a motivator instead of increasing supervision? What are your thoughts about this?
Hi, Tomer. This is Dan. I wanted to say a couple of things about your last remarks. First of all, a lot of people think that today how we work at home is the norm. I've worked at home for several years now, or often, and usually the kids are not home. Usually you have a lot of time to yourself. It's very quiet, unlike the office where you get interrupted all the time, go to coffee breaks, or people call you up to small meetings and chats. So working today at home is very different from how we would work at home normally, or let's say in 2 or 3 months from now, when the kids will be at school and our spouses might be at work physically or working in a different room. So there's a lot of differences between today and how things will be at home in a couple of weeks. And as for more supervision or less supervision, eventually it's all about putting I think in my sense, any timeline to any task. So once you have, maybe for some tasks you'll feel you need shorter timelines. Okay, let's regroup in 2 hours, show me what you've done. For others, you say, okay, take the day. At the end of the day, I want to see this task has been implemented or uploaded to somewhere so I can read it. So it really depends on the task itself.
Right. Thank you, Dan, and good to see you in this way. Other opinions? Right, with no more voice, we're very close to the end, and I would like to summarize. I would like to summarize the last half an hour. Call me an optimist, right? That if it continues long enough, we know that culture is created by consistent behavior. Now we're talking only about 5 weeks, but we can imagine that this will continue several more weeks or even a couple more months. And then we see that shift from formality to essence. And I just want to remind you that shift was actually quite welcome by this group. So this is desired, and I'm really happy to see that we are losing on the formality, and the essence, the authenticity is more important when we talk about being professional. The second thing is the leadership paradigm, moving away from control and supervision, because now it is just more difficult and it's not as effective to control and supervise people when they are at home. You must, in order to continue your leadership, to develop your leadership skills, more and more people opt to providing more purpose and more autonomy. This is not easy. This is not coming. It's not coming easily for a lot of leaders, but it is a trend, a strong trend. And we can see that happening. The last paradigm is the speed, because a lot of us are thinking about corporate culture as something that is permanent, something that is force majeure, right? You come into an organization and you feel this is it, and this is how we work. And how many times did I hear, that's just the way we do things here, or we just have to get permission first before we try something new, or God forbid we don't make any mistake, we need to make sure that we plan everything to detail. And this is just the way we do things, and this is not something that we can change. But we can see now a fantastic example how quickly things do change, and they are in our hands. So it is perfectly possible for organizations, after the mandatory home office ends, it's perfectly possible for organizations to go back and ask people to dress the same way, behave the same way as before, just go back to the old ways. And it's also perfectly possible for leaders to say, hey, we survived that. It works also with that high level of formality. I've done already one town hall with my T-shirt. I can try this again, right? It worked for Zuckerberg for the last 15 years. Why shouldn't it work for me? So it's definitely in the hands of the employees and leadership to decide, do we want to keep it? Do we want to continue the trend, or do we want to reverse it? But what I'm saying, look how fast this can happen, and look how it is in our hands. And this is not something that we can leave to happen by accident. We can actually take concrete measures and intentionally shape corporate cultures. Going back to you, Dimitri, just talking about the losing of formality, what does it mean for you in advisor?
Thank you very much, Tomer. That was brilliant. I am trying to share back my screen at you. In the meantime, I would like to ask for Tomer, are there any questions?
This is Andre. It's a question and also comment. You said there's a trend towards, more autonomy and the other topic which I forgot you mentioned. So the people can work and purpose, of course. Aren't you a little bit optimistic? Is that more of wishful thinking, or is this based on some evidence? Because I see the problem there. The reason why we haven't done this in the past in many organizations is because it's difficult. It requires pretty good essential knowledge, as I mentioned before, and you brought up, and also the character of the person and so on. So it's a difficult thing. Now I would wish it were like that. Don't get me wrong, but can you somehow, is there some evidence that there's a trend towards in this direction, or is it just an optimistic wish?
So about being optimistic, and thank you for the question. About being optimistic, there's no question about it. It wasn't the title of the slide. I am extreme optimist, and I make sure that in every project I have some pessimist next to me to keep me in line. About the evidence, it's totally anecdotal. At the moment, there's still no research that can tell us what was going on in the past 5 weeks. It is anecdotal. It's what I perceive, and I try to test my hypothesis with a few different groups to see if it's the only me feeling that, or is that perception of others as well. And so far, it seems that I hit the right notes, but there's no statistical evidence to show one way or another. Am I answering your question?
I mean, you are, and I'm not asking for statistical evidence, obviously, but it's more, I wanted to point out that this is very difficult for managers to do if they were not used to this and they were chosen 20 years ago and they do their little operational job and their goal is zero defect, blah blah blah. Why should they all of a sudden turn into this very purposeful, long strategically minded people? It's also maybe a little bit unfair. And will that happen in 5 weeks? No. Does it happen as a general trend? Perhaps, and hopefully so. And that was more my question. But I don't expect statistics by now, 5 weeks.
I understand and I appreciate that you say that. And you know, I'm dealing with corporate culture in the past decade or so, and I think the notion that this is difficult is a question of expectations. If you expect people to react in a rational way, for example, you are going to get disappointed. It is going to be difficult. If you expect people to have resistance to change, if you expect people to behave humanly, it starts to become easier. And humanly means a lot of things. So you need to understand a lot about human nature if you want to understand and affect corporate culture. So working with human nature is making it much less difficult. And it is not, it is mostly, I mean, my answer until recently was always, these things never happen overnight. Now, of course, I cannot use it anymore because you see, you just need one little virus and it could happen overnight. But the cultural change does take time. It's a result of consistent behavior. If you want to take it in your hands and move it in a certain direction, you can do that proactively, you can do that intentionally with the right expectations. It is not as difficult, right? If you have expectations that people will just follow instructions, for example, you're going to get disappointed. It's going to be very, very difficult.
So
I would have one more question, but it's only with a little wink. On the picture we have on our screen, Tomer, why are you wearing suit and tie there?
That's my LinkedIn profile. What do you think?
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Tomer. Thank you, Andre, for all the questions. I'm looking at my clock here, and I think we need to start wrapping up. So, Tomer, thanks so much for being here, for talking almost for 40 minutes to us here. If people have additional questions, where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, I'm the only Tomer Lanis, so it's easy to find me online on Google or LinkedIn. Maybe I'll put here on the comment my email address. Oops, what happened?
So that's then people can reach out to you via LinkedIn or email. That's great. You put it in the comments. Before people start jumping off, I would like to have a few additional comments. Tomer, thanks so much for being present, for having us here. We do continue our sessions, and we have the Rethink Corporate Culture event number 10. It is online already. It is on Eventbrite. We have a limited amount of tickets, so please make sure to get your tickets already. It's free. We have Nicole Brandes, a bestseller author, next time. It's in 18th of May, and she will be talking about business as unusual, how to thrive in turbulent times. So make sure to register there. If you have additional questions for us, this is my contact details. Please reach out to me. We are also on advaisor.io, and I would like to give you a last message here before we jump off. Through the written communication and through the Advaisor app, which you can download on App Stores if you wanted to check it out. But I wish you all the best, and stay safe, stay connected, and stay healthy, first and foremost.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Record. Something is wrong.
Dimitri, I think you can stop the recording.
Perfect. Good stuff.
Who is Leon?